Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. My husband and I have been together for 3 years, married for two. He's the most amazing man that I've ever met. And until now, every day that I've spent with him, I felt like a princess. I know I have my imperfections. I would never label myself as the perfect wife material. I know I'm not the most feminine person either. I have short hair, tattoos, and I like to dress scoff. I thought all these features of me were admired by my husband. Hell, in fact, he was the one who would encourage me to get a new piercing or a tattoo every time I was hesitant to get one because of how much my family put my sense of fashion down. So, this situation is especially bothering me because never in a million years I thought my husband would say something like this about me. That too, not on my face, but behind my back. Well, you see, we moved into this city 3 months ago due to the fact that my husband's job had a promotion lined up for him here. Now, the thing about this city is that it is very different from what we were previously used to. The city that we previously lived in is extremely high end, so I didn't really stand out there. I could say on every other street, you could see about 10 people with the same fashion sense as I do. So that made it very easy for me to blend it. That wasn't the case over here, however, since this was a very small conservative city. It really stood out here. It was like I would have at least one person staring at me up and down every time I got out of the house. This obviously affected my self esteem. I started to get anxious and started feeling a bit different. It wasn't as bad though, because eventually I realized the staring wasn't necessarily bad. What helped me more was my husband always encouraged me and hyping me up for my fashion style and body like he always has. Well, I'm not sure what happened, but this side of him started to fade away slowly and eventually. I wasn't the only one struggling with adjusting over here. My husband, too, had his own sets of struggles, one of which included having a hard time making friends. You see, being a conservative town, this place is filled with men who claim that they're the most masculine men to ever exist and often make fun of each other if they ever find themselves bending over for a woman. My husband has never been the type of guy to do something like this. He lived in a household like this and knew how weird toxic masculinity is, and so never became a part of that culture. Well, I guess months of being alone, the loneliness really took over him. So he went out and made a few friends through a local pub that he frequented. Needless to say, these guys were huge on being macho men. I've met them personally a couple of times during barbecues, and calling them toxic would truly be an understatement. But this isn't about them, this is about my husband. So he continues hanging out with this group of guys, and honestly, he seems quite happy. At least happier than he previously was. So, regardless of what I think of these guys, I let him be until this happens. My husband and his group of friends do this thing where they take turns having their meetup sessions at each other's house. They simply just drink and eat and watch football matches during these meetups. So when it came my husband's turn to invite his friends over, he understandably got quite excited. I was excited for him too and helped him make all the arrangements and buy the required items for the get together. When his friends came over, I went as far as to prepare most of the food. Now, even though I agree I don't work as much as my husband, I do have a small side thing going on where I make up gigs as a content writer. So when his friends came over, I got busy with that, and after about an hour of working, I decided to take a small break and get myself a drink. I go outside to the kitchen, which is close to the living room, and I start preparing my drink. That is where I start hearing laughter and my name being called. So it piques my attention, and I decide to hear what they're talking about. And oh boy, what I hear there leaves me dumbfounded. I stand there hoping that my husband would say something funny about our relationship, but there I am, listening to my husband talk about how he's settled for me, how I don't do any of the household chores, and how that is expected of a girl like me, referring to my looks. Apparently, this is what happens when a guy gets married to a good looking girl. So, to put it in the simplest words possible, my own husband was calling me a trophy wife. He then added how he regretted marrying me and how he wished he married a girl that was simple like the women in this town. I was hearing this as his friends made some extremely sexist remarks, not only towards me, but towards their own wives. I was standing there, stunned, but I knew humiliating my husband wouldn't be enough. I just had to teach him a lesson. So, from the next day onward, I started acting exactly how he described me, lazy and wasting my time and money on shopping. I woke up that day, didn't make him any breakfast or any lunch, and just left for my shopping. I didn't clean the house, cook dinner, or do anything. I even brought myself clothes from his credit card that I would only use to buy household items. I wouldn't talk to him and do nothing that was household related. I continued this for a week and I could see the frustration build up in my husband. He was starting to get angrier and angrier when I was turning into the woman he claimed I was. I honestly had a nice week's worth of break, and it was nice seeing my husband struggling with packing his meals every day. I was honestly just going to get back to our normal routine, but now I'm feeling conflicted because I received a call from my mother in law berating me for being a horrible wife. How my husband has been struggling with keeping up with things and yada yada. Now, my husband isn't the type to go running to his mom over issues, so this call definitely makes me question if I went too far with things. AITA for starting to act like the woman my husband told his friends that I was. A lot of you rightly pointed out I needed to sit down with my husband and have a conversation with him. He seemed very agitated at the beginning, and he tried to blame the entire situation on me and told me that I should have come to help him when his friends were around and things could have simply been avoided. This caused a huge back and forth between my husband and I, where I basically told him how I don't need to act as his friend's servant simply because they thought that they were better than women. I also pointed out how wrong it was for him to just change his demeanor for his new friends and how it just doesn't look good on him. I had so much to say from the comments that you left him, but with the overwhelming amount of response, it would have taken me ages to say all those amazing points you guys left in the comments. So I simply just showed him the post, and after a couple of minutes into reading, he started tearing up. He hugged me tightly and started apologizing to me profusely. He said he knew what he did was extremely wrong. How he's been feeling like a horrible husband ever since the moment he said that, and how he wishes that he would have never said what he said. I knew this is what he had been feeling all along, but I told him that even though it's nice that he realizes his fault, I want to know what he's going to do to fix it because I want to know that he's actually done something to fix his mistake before I can forgive him. So, since the past few days, that is what we have been discussing. We've looked into a lot of options, and there are a few on top of our minds. I will definitely update you all once we come into a decision. Hi, all. I last updated my post 6 months ago. No, my husband and I are not divorced. We had multiple discussions over the span of a month after the situations took place, and honestly, these conversations have gotten us closer than ever. We realized how this move has impacted us deeply and how much we're not fit to be here. So we decided to move, yes, again, but not back to our home state. We moved to a city which fit more into the living standards that we were used to, and it's been blissful to make friends that have similar thoughts, views, beliefs as us. This is not all either. My husband and I started individual and couples therapy, which has helped us tremendously after figuring our struggles with self esteem and making boundaries, which stem from our childhood. The couples counseling has also taught us about how important it is to have clear and direct communication about expectations from each other and how it is important to not discuss, get influenced by our friends' views on our marriage. As for the household chores, we have decided to start splitting them equally. My husband himself has come up with this plan as he thinks he genuinely needs to learn to cook by himself as well. I know this is just the beginning of everything. My husband and I have a long way to go, but the fact that we have already made so much progress is what makes me so proud of us. I can't say I have forgiven my husband, no, but I know one day I will definitely get there. My husband knows that and is completely okay with that. Lastly, I want to thank you all for reading and giving me amazing advice that went way beyond saying, get a divorce. NTA. But I would say instead of all this, get enrolled into individual and couples therapy, especially for your husband. He's clearly struggling in this town, and it seems like he's going through some sort of identity crisis, which is not good for your marriage, obviously. NTA, your husband is weird for being two-faced like this. If I was in your place, I honestly wouldn't have been able to just stay there quietly. The fact that you simply just stop cooking and cleaning is the least of what he deserves for being so mean to you. I would suggest first sitting down and having a calm conversation with him. I'm a 50-year-old female and I was married to a good man. I was his second wife. He had a son, 22, and we'll call him Mark, from his first marriage. Together, we had a son, Chuck, 16, who has special needs. My husband passed away 10 years ago. My husband had a life insurance policy for Mark for $500,000 as a part of his divorce. I talked him into getting a policy for Chuck, too. He got a $250,000 policy for him. But with Chuck's diagnosis and wanting to save for college for Mark, I asked my husband to also start individual savings for both boys. Before he passed, I looked at the accounts and he fessed up to giving Mark the savings over the years. Expensive clothes, phones, trips with friends to Disney, walking around, money for a kid. My husband never told him no. Whatever my son wanted, he got. So Chuck had $25,000 saved, and Mark's account only had $800. I was livid and stopped giving my husband money. Instead, I kept putting money away in my own savings for the boys. My husband said he just felt guilty that his son was the child of divorce and wanted him to have a happy life. After my husband died, Mark got his life insurance policy. But his mother blew through the $500,000 before he was 16. I used the $250,000 money and bought an investment property. It's worth a lot more now, and Chuck has a healthy savings from it, as well as I reinvest profits into a trust for Chuck. It's about $630,000 total value. I had $6,000 set aside for Mark that I saved on my own. I gave it to him when he turned 18, and he bought a car with it. My stepson recently found out his brother has money. He lost another job, so he has been staying with girlfriend because he doesn't get along with his mother's boyfriend. The girl's parents are evicting them. I offered to let them live with me for a bit if he contributed to the bills by getting a job and keeping it. Then he could save for a place on his own. He refused that help. Instead, he wanted to live in his brother's rental property for what sounded like free. I said absolutely not. We have reliable tenants. I'm not going to evict them so that he has a place to stay. He said no, he meant give him the property because he says it was purchased using his dad's money and I had no right to be keeping him from what should be his. And if I didn't give him the house, I needed to give him the value of the house out of the money invested. He threatened to sue me. I was stunned. I said absolutely not. He should be asking his mother for his money, not me, not his brother. He called his father's sisters and said that he's struggling and going to be homeless, and his girlfriend just found out she's pregnant. That's why her parents are kicking them out. I guess they weren't expecting her to get pregnant from that living arrangement. So he needs the money, and I'm being a greedy, evil stepmother, according to him. They are calling me an AH and heartless. AITA? NTA. Mark needs to sue his mother. That money was for him, not her. He shouldn't expect a handout from you now. NTA. He's had everything that was bequeathed to him off his dad already, and now he's coming for what he thinks is an easy target. Call his bluff and let him try and sue. He's not legally entitled to anything at all that wasn't stipulated in your husband's will as you survived your husband. He sounds very manipulative too. Keep your guard up and think of Chuck's future. Mark has had his fair opportunity already, and if he should be bitter towards anyone, it's Mother that blew his original inheritance. My husband and I got a puppy, Scout, a few weeks ago. He's now 12 weeks old. For background, I have a 2-year-old medical and psychiatric alert service dog. I got him before my partner and I got married, and he was fully supportive of me and my dog, Toby, and is a great caretaker of him. I've always wanted 2 dogs, and we've both always wanted kids. After a lot of discussion and spreadsheets, we decided to get a second dog to be a friend for our current dog and to help him learn how to share me before we have kids one day. Everything was going great. We both love and adore Scout, my husband especially. It's like Toby was my dog and Scout was his. Then one day we were visiting his family before we left on a trip to visit my family. His brother, 18, was born with panhypopituitarism and is medically fragile. As a result, his parents have been looking for a service dog for him to take to college. I've helped them find good trainers and refer them to several places to get a dog. When we were visiting his family before our trip, his mom made an offhand comment that Scout is such a good dog and he would make a great service dog. And then started talking about how tragic it is that the puppy that they had their eyes on for brother-in-law failed his evaluation for service dog work. I agreed, thinking that it was a casual passing thought compliment. Fast forward 2 weeks to now, my husband took the comment from mother-in-law as a great idea and has been pushing for us to look into giving Scout away to brother-in-law to be trained as his service dog. The trainers did an aptitude and temperament test, and Scout passed with flying colors. The only thing keeping Scout from being brother-in-law's dog is me. Husband and I agreed to not make a final decision until we both totally agree. Husband's argument. We had such good luck finding a perfect puppy. Full papered AKC golden with genetic testing for $600. Most of litter went to service dog trainers and passed all tests, etc. That it can't be a coincidence that brother-in-law's puppy didn't pass right as we got ours. A trained service dog could save brother-in-law's life. We don't need 2 dogs, but he needs a service dog. My argument. I don't feel like we owe his parents our dog because their potential puppy failed his test. They could have started looking for a service dog for brother-in-law before he graduated high school. Mother-in-law isn't on great terms with either of us. Classic narcissist, regularly puts down husband publicly, makes nasty remarks about my siblings when we come to visit, yelled at us at our own wedding for not doing things the way she wanted, etc. But keeps trying to sweet talk and guilt trip us into giving up our dog. We put a lot of money into Scout and I want to keep him. So, WIBTA if I refuse to agree with my husband to give away our puppy, even if it could potentially save my brother-in-law's life? NTA, none of this makes sense to me. If your brother-in-law is attending college in a month, your puppy wouldn't be a service dog by then. My understanding is that many service dogs are raised and initially trained by other people, and then the dogs are matched to people who need the dog. From what I've seen on documentaries, there's no guarantee that one particular dog would train well for a specific disability, nor that it would be a good match for any particular person. Additionally, your brother-in-law isn't likely to have the time to train the puppy while attending college and taking care of his own needs. The idea that your puppy is going to be specifically trained to meet brother-in-law's needs is kind of far-fetched. Remember, too, that all the things that make your puppy a potentially good service dog are characteristics that make him a good dog for your household. My recommendation would be to tell your husband that your dog isn't being given away. He's a member of your family now. But you could give your in-laws the contact info for the breeder, who may have or know of other puppies available. NTA, a lack of planning on their part does not constitute an emergency on yours. When you have children, will they expect you to give them up too? Because it would be easier for brother-in-law than finding a wife and having kids of his own?